Hey, welcome to another episode of Lips Garage. Today we are getting started working on the 55 F100. So for those that remember, one of my projects is a 55 Ford F100. This one has been number 3 on my all-time if I could ever get one list. And then for my 40th birthday, my wife and my daughter bought me one. That one had a Chevy small block in it, had a flip nose front end. It was really cool, but the more and more I got into it, somebody done a GM front clip. I wanted to bring it back to what I wanted to build instead of trying to make what somebody else did. So I ended up taking everything off of that frame that I was going to use, which essentially ended up just being the bed at that point. I ended up buying another frame, and then in the meantime I bought another frame that had this cab on it. The bed is off of the original truck, like I said. I ended up sourcing some inner fenders and some outer fenders from a couple different places just to be able to have something to go up. It is a factory original frame. Plans at this point, most likely going to be a Mustang 2 front end. At the moment, I am leaning towards a 302 and a C4, but that could always change. It is the factory style bed. Right now, the driver's fender is off, but this style did come with the exterior spare tire mount. Again, my plans are to run the 3-inch extended fiberglass rear fenders. One, weight saving, 2, lets me get a wider tire under there. So for today, I've been working on a little bit of cleanup. I did mock up the front fenders. The ones that I got did have the air dams or air pans behind them. They also had a cutoff section of the fender. So that cutoff section basically came to right here, and then the air dam behind it. These are eventually going to get replaced. The 1955 is a little bit different with the way that the headlight buckets are, but I'm getting them up there for mock-up purposes. So I was able to cut all that off. It's a decent start to a fender. It's not brand new, but I don't build vehicles like that. It's going to be a little bit better than a rat rod, but not a show truck by any means. Just something fun, run around to the store, whatnot. So I did mock up the front fenders. I did mock up the front grille. I'm still trying to decide if I want to do a factory bumper or if I want to cut the horns off and do a flush mount there. So not really sure where I'm going with that yet. The doors. This is a factory style door. I do plan on taking off the wing window. I already have the one-piece window kit. I have what's called Altman latches, which is a lot better latch than what factory had. I do have a whole new wiring harness for it. I do have an I Did It steering column that should work with whatever front end I decide to put on it. That particular seat is out of my 55 wagon. I'm going to see if that will go in here and kind of fit side to side for the time being. Still trying to decide ultimately what I'm going to do on the inside. But what I've been working on, like I said, is a bunch of cleaning. So there are a bunch of random pieces that I've got to see what they are and if it's anything I'm going to use. That's a headlight bucket. There was a lot of like this crumbly stuff that I was ripping off, like I guess I would call it seam sealer. And then there was some sound deadener sprayed onto the back. So I ended up getting all that chipped out. I used, kind of a wide flat scraper to get most of that stuff off. And then just a little one to get the seam sealer off. It was big on the floor area. There is still some on the lower portion. I'll get to that later. I'll kind of do it in stages. It is a nice day for being in November up here. So I want to try and get this far done and then get some some high build primer on it to lock in because I am going to bare metal. So what I'm using right now is a flapper disc on a die grinder or an angle grinder. This one's a 4-inch style. And this is actually making pretty good progress on it. The particular, get in front of the camera, the particular disc that I'm using is a 36 grit. That's going to get through and get it pretty close to bare metal. I'm going to do a self-etching and then a high build primer because I do have some kind of older metal. Again, I'm not building a show vehicle, but I also don't want it to fall apart. I do plan on putting, full interior, sound deadener, things like that to make it comfortable to drive. I have a big thick mat on the floor when I get that far. But project as of right now is to start getting everything on the inside stripped. There's a nice little happy home. Hopefully they are evicted for the weather. But again, kind of get started on the interior of the cab. And then I've got to go to the store, get some hardware, and finish mocking up the front end. I do have a lead on a hood as well as some door latches. These guys, they're not cheap to buy new or free factory reman. I do have a guy that's got the hood, actually the one that I got the chassis and the cab from, that says he might have a couple doors I can just have that I'll take the hinges off of. And again, I do have the latch kit downstairs. So that's my projects as I've got going so far today. So after a couple of coats of primer, we'll let it sit and finish tacking up, and then we'll be able to see the spots that need a little more work. Back to the sanding, which I showed you. I use this stuff, prep spray, grease, and wax remover. So any kind of specific cleaner that's going to take off all residue is always going to give you a better job. Again, I've said before, practice makes permanence. Once I've done that, because it's interior, I'm just doing 2-in-1 filler sandable primer. Rust-Oleum's got a pretty good product. They also sent me this little handle, which works pretty handy. There's a couple different options of them. You can get them at your local parts house. This one's a club that I joined. They sent me one as a trial. Works pretty good. It's got some finger pinches that opens up, clips around your bottle, and then saves on your finger. Gives you an actual trigger spray. So that guy makes a little quick work of it. Again, I've got 2 coats on it. And just because my ADD kicked in, I started doing a few other things. So I did a little bit of sanding around this guy, went around the whole door frame and started coming to the back of the cab. Just kind of get an idea of what the overall condition is. Once you got everything one color, you can start seeing some of your imperfections. It'll be a little bit easier, at least for me, everybody's different, to see where your imperfections are. So coming around here, I've got a couple here. This one's just a discoloration, not too bad. I've got a couple small pieces there. So when you've got something like this, it's a couple different colors or something that's kind of you've got the paints coming through. Once you get your base sand that you want to get done, get a real cheap primer over it. You don't have to spend a lot of money on it, and then you'll be able to see where some of your imperfections are.
At this point, I kind of put everything together, put a quick rattle can black on it, because I'd planned on selling it. I listed up on a couple of different places on Facebook and did have somebody reach out that was interested in the project and then interested in having me finish it, which kind of set up the next couple years. The budget got blown to hell, the time frame got blown to hell, but this thing is getting built. It's something still in progress, but I'm getting all the videos situated for the season release. But this is where it sat when the gentleman decided to make a deal for the purchase and the build of it.
All right, so it's been a little bit since I've done any substantial work on the 53. I do have the boxing plates for the front suspension kind of mocked up and pressed in. I got to get them welded in yet. I'm getting measured out where the front cross member is going to go. That's the rough center line of the axle as it sits. I know a lot of times people will take that axle and move it about an inch, inch and a quarter forward, and that centers the wheel wells in the centers the rim in the wheel well. Coming around, this is the engine I'm putting in. Again, this is a 351 Windsor, fairly stock. It does have the 4-barrel conversion on it, which is nice. It's got an Excel super coil, which I will take off and put something a little more updated on. Take a look, make sure we've got a good strong electronic ignition to go with it. Pull it out. I'm gonna go through all the seals and everything like that. Again, I know it runs. I pulled this out of the car myself. Originally, it had the C4 3-speed automatic transmission on it, and we are going to go with the AODE electronic shift 4-speed. Eventually, we are going to go with the Phytech fuel injection, and they got a standalone management system. So with my video editing, I don't really remember where we are at, but this is our build list. So we have got the front disc conversion with 4.5 bolt pattern. We decided to do the Mustang 2 front suspension on there. Rear disc drum conversion with 4.5 bolt pattern or 8/8 rear diff swap. So this is the rear differential out of a 2000 Ford Explorer. It is one of the popular swaps for this particular setup. I will be taking out the side shock, obviously taking out speed sensor, getting everything all cleaned up. It does have a disc brake setup on it now. I did get an aftermarket disc brake setup to match the setup that we're putting on the front. Let's see, where else are we at on the list? Engine and transmission brackets. I do have the engine mount sitting up on the cowl there. Those are welded in, so as soon as I get the front end put in, we'll mock up where the engine goes, and then I'll be able to secure that. We do have a transmission, an adjustable transmission mount. Again, once I get the transmission and the engine located, then we'll know where we're going to put that. Wheels and tires. When I get that far, I'm actually going to take the wheels and tires off my Fairlane just to mock up and see what the customer thinks of that. So drivetrain, again, we're doing the 351 Windsor. We are going to go with the EFI. We are going to do the AODE. Exhaust, not sure yet. Paint, he has decided on a paint color. So I've got a few folks that work in the paint industry that are looking to try and get a match as best they can. We're not going to do the one-piece windows, so I'm going to have to source out a window rebuild kit for all the gaskets and hardware and everything. Running boards, we are going to keep the running boards, and we're going to do the little chrome step. Fenders, we are going to do the extended rear fenders, and I'm taking a look at maybe doing a set of fiberglass front fenders. The bed, we are going to do wood bed kit. Fuel tank, we're still making some decisions on that, but I think we're going to do the in-the-bed tank with the in-the-bed filler. Interior, we are actually taking a look at doing a set of the King Ranch seats on the inside, and then we'll be able to do the interior to match that. He is fine with a floor shifter, automatic floor shifter. The color, the door panels are going to attempt to match the seats with that dark kind of multicolored leather, and then the rest of it is going to be more of a tan. Gauges, we're going to keep the factory gauges and just make them work with the new 12-volt system. And then accessories, he definitely wants to go with air conditioning. He's okay with the manual locks, manual windows. If I can find a way to do it reasonable, we might throw a cruise control in there because he's wanting a highway cruiser. So that's most of the main components of build. We are talking about like what kind of side mirrors that he wants and what kind of this, what kind of that, little things here and there towards the end of the build. But for right now, we have a really good plan in place to start with. I've gotten a little bit of body work done. I'm going to be doing more on the engine, getting it cleaned up, getting it dressed up. He's decided on an engine color. We're going to do the typical Ford blue. They've got the two different colors. One is a darker old Ford blue, and they got a little bit brighter just Ford blue. And that's the one that we're going to do. It actually matches the color I did in the Fairlane. So at this point, I'm just waiting to get the front end welded together, the cross member and whatnot, and then I can get the rest of it bolted together, get the brake kit on. I need to clean up that rear differential. I need to source out a set of backing plates because the ones that are on there are rusted. Then once I do that, then basically the chassis will be done. The only thing I'm kind of sort of looking at is maybe doing a 4-link in the rear just to match a little bit more of updated what that Mustang 2 is. I've got some door hinges on order. They should be here any day now, so I can start mocking up how the doors are going to go and whether or not I keep these or if I source another set. So some small decisions to make yet, but we are underway. All right, now we're going to dig a little bit more into the engine and get it taken care of and prepped up to put in the vehicle. So I did a brief cleanup and a quick paint job just to kind of be motivated, see where some of my trouble areas were. I am replacing the water pump. The kit that I'm going to look at comes with a new one. I did have your typical Ford, couple of the studs break off, so I got to clean all that up. I'm going to pull the balancer off. So you can see we got some heavy cracking, so I am going to replace that with an aftermarket unit. That was part of the plan. but I have a front accessory kit I'm going to mock up while I'm waiting for parts to come in. So I'm going to reuse the intake that was on here. It's good enough shape. I'm going to clean it off and, you know, get everything kind of good. Go through all the bolt holes. I've got, again, atypical, some water jacket issues. Common on these, just a little bit of base maintenance. Taking a look at the intake. Yeah, and just some stuff to clean up. Not uncommon on these, but it is a good one. Performer RPM was what I was going to use anyway. So, again, I've got a good basic on it. Now, one of the things I was toying on using with this build or with a personal build is the front accessory kit. So originally I planned on putting this engine in my 1955 wagon, but I'm going to end up putting it into the truck because that wagon's a little way down the road, and I'm kind of changing what I'm doing with that one. I had ordered up a kit from a company called CVF. That one does have the power steering kit. It's got the air conditioning kit and everything to it, which is everything we plan on doing on the truck anyway. So this kit will give me everything I need to get that taken care of. In this section, we're going to be dealing with the front suspension. So throughout the entirety of automotive history, there have been numerous types of suspension assemblies. From transverse leaf spring, straight axle, independent front end, McPherson strut, modified McPherson strut, so on. There's way more than I'm going to be able to cover in this particular series. Dealing with this type of truck, there's three most common ones that are being used, and there's a bunch of other ones that happen as well. But the three most common, if you're wanting to keep something forward, is obviously modify your original, which would be possibly taking leaf springs out to set the ride height, doing a dropped straight axle, some of that nature. You're modifying your existing one. Something that's kind of come on in the last few years is taking a newer Crown Victoria, like an 03 to 2011, that has an aluminum subframe that you can drop, modify, and mount on these. There's some companies that make a narrowed subframe. The 53 to 56 F100 is a little bit narrower than some of the other ones. Your later model trucks are actually pretty close and will stay as is. But that gives you rack and pinion steering, it gives you the bigger brakes, gives you all the amenities of a modern suspension. What a lot of people have been doing for years is adapting the Mustang 2 front end. So Mustang 2 gets a lot of flack for being a bad car. My opinion, for what it's worth, my 2 cents is it was a car that it needed to be at the time. When you compare it to today, yeah, obviously it was underdog, it was underpowered, but it kept the Mustang alive and it gave us an awesome suspension to be able to modify and use across all makes and model. The Mustang 2 is one of the most popular aftermarket suspension setups there are. And I mean, people will graft on. I think Jaguar is a popular one. You can take a standard Chevy front clip, like from a Camaro, Nova, something of that nature. Like I said, there's more that people do, but those are the three most common. And what I decided to do, talking with the customer, is we decided to put a Mustang 2 front end on here. So if we take a look at the factory suspension, you're going to have what's called a straight axle. So that's mounted to 2 leaf springs. And basically, as it goes over bumps, you're going to have the leaf spring activate, but the whole axle is going to move with it. You do have a spot for the shock, which is off now. Your steering is back behind it. The steering box is off this one, but normally the steering box should go right there. They do make power adapters for it, but most of them are just manual steering. So what we're going to go with, and it is now welded on, is going to be a Mustang 2 front end. Now you can order these specific for the vehicle that you're working on in different widths. So I did get one of these for this generation F-150. So you're going to have the main cross member. This is going to be where the rack and pinion mounts. You can get power or manual. We're going power. This big tab here is where the lower control arm sits. This piece here is going to be where the upper control arm bolts and where the coil spring, the upper coil spring seat, and it gives you independent suspension. So basically what an independent suspension does, it's the easiest way for me is to, let's just grab this pen. So if this is a straight axle, whenever you go over a bump, you're going to go like that. So you will have a little bit of, corner specific movement, but for the most part, you're moving the whole thing. You're either going on a way angle, or when you hit smaller bumps, you're just kind of hitting the same thing. So what happens in an independent is you've got your cross member here, but each suspension piece at the end of it is able to move. So, if you're running down the road like this, if this is your driver's side, this is your passenger side, depending on what your angle is, you go over a bump, the whole thing's not rocking, just that will go up, just what that will go up. So what that does is really smooths out the ride. The whole front end isn't jarring. The other thing that this particular suspension does is give us rack and pinion steering. So in a typical draglink style steering, you've got 6, 7, 8, 10 joints that are all going to have a little bit amount of play in them as you're going left and right. This eliminates that down to 2 points. It's a lot more stable and secure. You're not going to have quite as much wandering across the road. With the suspension type, you can adjust your shocks, you can adjust your coil, your spring rate, things like that a lot easier to give you a real fine-tuned ride. There's just a lot of things that you can do with it, but under the basic, it's going to improve your ride quality. And something like this, when you figure the suspension type is 50 years newer than what the original one is, a lot of people are like, oh, I can't use it as a truck anymore. You can. The spring rates are going to be the same. You're not reducing its effectiveness. And at a certain point, it's actually increasing because it's going to be safer, especially if you're pulling a load and you're not having that front end wander while you've got a load or while you've got a trailer. That's going to make everything just all the more safe when you're going down the road for you, for the trailer, for others that are behind you. The more stable your pulling vehicle is, the more stable your pulled vehicle is, whether it be a trailer or whatever. So we are increasing the ride. We are dropping the ride height a little bit lower in that center of gravity. The guy wants a good highway cruiser. He's not really concerned about the truck aspect of it, which is fine. You know, everybody's got their own preference. We're going to go to the 4.5-inch bolt pattern, which is really going to increase your wheel options because the factory 5-on-5, they're either just not that many out there or they're really expensive. So there's a lot of things that this front end is going to do. Now, I did have to take this over to somebody else's shop to get the welding done. I'm not a welder myself. So for that reason, I left the front suspension on just so I could move it around while we got everything tied in. Now, the one thing a lot of folks will do with this series of truck, if you kind of look where the center line of the factory axle is and the center line of this one, a lot of folks will move this thing about an inch, inch and a quarter, inch and a half forward because factory, the wheel was not centered in the wheel well. So a lot of folks will move that forward just to give it a better look. Why they did that, I don't have the answer for that. If you do, if you know, if you have a thought, drop it in comments. I'll take a look and see. So first thing we're going to do is, that right there is a boxing plate. You've got to be able to weld to something. So these are a regular C-channel frame. So there's the welded boxing in plates. Center out where you want that axle center line to be. This particular kit does put this at a little bit of an angle, and that's going to set some of your alignment angles. So once you do that, you weld in the lower cross member, which welds, see if I can get a good shot. It's going to weld across the bottom of the chassis, up and then across. I do have to clean these welds up. They're not finished by any means, but they're structural and they're going to support the weight. This upper cup mounts, and again, it's going to come across the frame. It's going to go lengthwise. It's going to come down the outside, and then it's going to weld on the inside as well. So this thing is structurally sound. It's going to handle the weight of the vehicle. It's going to handle the weight of the engine. Again, I will dress up the welds a little bit, but this is a really good, really solid setup. So what I'm going to do with this guy is remove the suspension as a unit so I can just roll it out. I do have another frame for this, and I'll be able to put that on the other frame. So what we're going to do is remove that connection. We're going to come up front. We're going to remove that connection on both sides, and then I'll be able to just wheel this whole thing out, and then I'll be able to start attaching the new suspension to it and, you know, get everything where I need to go there. Part of this is also going to be, again, that steering arm. So it's going to remove everything. Eventually, I'll take out some more of these plates to make room as I need to. I'll leave in what I can for support, but I'm going to take out what I have to for clearance. So we're going to start there. Once I get everything else done, that was a shock mount. I'll get that knocked off on both ends. I got to cut them out. And then I'll get the shackle hangers out when I clean it up before I condition the frame. All right. Take out the pin in each corner, 4 of them out. If I did my figuring right. So you got one guy stuck. That's a little warm from the torch. friend, Mr. Mallet. There we go. Oh, my kingdom for a bigger garage. Burning the 11 o'clock oil. Let's see. There goes the old axle. Gives me all the room I need to bolt the other side up. So let me reset and we'll be back. Now we're looking at the main components of the suspension right here. We've got the lower control arm that has a spring pocket in it. We've got the upper control arm, the spring, and the shock. The lower control arm bolts right there. Upper control arm bolts here. These T-nuts come up through the bottom and in, and then when the upper control arm is mounted, slides back and forth on this track to help with your camber adjustment. Spring obviously goes onto there, and it sinks into this pocket, and the spindle bolts onto the ball joints, so on both ends. So it's a little more difficult than I thought it was with just one person. I did end up getting this side put together. Again, this is mock-up stage only. So there's a couple like bushings and stuff that I have not installed yet. So these are going to be part of a like a bump steer kit. Just make sure everything is angled correctly. But this is one of those where you have to be extremely careful when you're putting together, because there's a lot of tension in that spring. And if done wrong, I know I've said this before, if done wrong, that is something that can severely hurt or even kill you. But for the time being, I do have this corner started. We've got the drilled and slotted disc brake setup. For what this vehicle is, that's going to be mostly cosmetic. They're not going to really need the braking that thing's going to provide. But I have everything mocked up. And once I get the other side done, I'll get the rack and pinion installed, which goes right here. Get the tie rod started, which will go into here. And I'll have the front, like I said, pretty well mocked up enough where I can get the wheels on it. So the shocks themselves, it's got a shaft on the bottom and a pin on the top. So that bolt right there is going to go through the lower portion of the shock, and the top part is going to come through that hole right here. I'm going to hold off on mounting those until I'm a little more into my final assembly. That way I'm able to get things at right height when I put that shock in, and I'm not running a risk of having it droop like that. So this is what the one corner looks like. So we got the other side mocked up. Again, everything but the shock. Things are just hand tightened in just to make sure everything clears, everything fits, everything's where I want it to be. I've got the rack and pinion here. Now I did kind of pull one of the mechanic boo-boos. I pulled everything out originally to check the manifest, make sure everything that was supposed to be there was there. And at the moment I have misplaced the hardware to actually bolt the rack up. But the rack itself, again, bolts into those two tabs. You got the inner tie rods. There is an extension here, and then the outer tie rods go on and connect on the inside of the spindle. So when you're lining things up, there is a left and a right. So with the lower control arm, obviously you want that to line up with the spring bucket. With the spindles, you've got to have the little tab obviously on the side that the rack and pinion is. And then when we're looking at the brake, we're on the back side, obviously on the brake caliper, wherever I'm at, you want the bleeder, there it is, to be on top. So just little things to pay attention to when you're putting it together. But these are not the wheels that are going to go on it, but I wanted to double check that the bolt pattern that I had was correct. Basically any Mustang, any Ranger, any atypical Ford 5x4.5 rim is going to work on this thing. You will want to double check your offset. That's one thing I was doing, making sure that you're going to clear your suspension. So these are a 17x8, I believe. They come off of like a 99 to 04 Mustang. But again, as I've been saying, this is just for mock-up. Eventually I'll find a cheap set of tires I can toss onto these to put it on the ground and get a little better idea. So that's where I'm at this point. The front end is coming along. So this is a different kind of build than I usually do, different kind of videos that I do. Continuity is probably going to be all over the place just because I'm shooting as I can and don't really have a specific order that I'm doing. So I've been doing some on the engine, I've been doing some on the body, I've been doing some on the suspension. One, depending on what parts I have available. Two, depending on what kind of time I have. It is middle of October, kind of second half of October here in Wisconsin. I wanted to have the body work basically done at this point to where I could at least get the thing in primer. That is not going to happen. You can see behind me, I'm still working on, getting some of the old stuff apart. So I do have a couple of buddies that have paint booths who said that if need be, I can get them over there. So hopefully I can get this thing in primer, let's call it by the end of November, so I can get that set up. But once the chassis is done, I can get the body kind of set in place where I need it to be, start on the wiring, start on some of the other stuff. But the big one, with any foundation or with any project of any kind, you need a good foundation. So once I get this front end done, figure out what I'm gonna do with the rear suspension, the rest of it should go pretty quickly.
Oh, how naive I was way back then. It should all go pretty quick. Anyway, that's going to wrap up the first episode. I'm going to have a couple of these little filler videos to kind of explain some of the continuity issues that I happen to having with some of the filming, and some of it was due to video loss. I was having issues with my GoPro. I'll admit, probably operator error. But yeah, I'll try and describe and try and smooth out some of the things that happen. I'm still working on that particular vehicle. So as of right now, it's not complete yet. But I did show you in the intro to the season the new space we're going to be working out of. So I'm going to spend a few days getting all my parts and pieces in a central location to hopefully finish the assembly and get that thing done and gone. But otherwise, again, that's kind of the start to the season. We'll see where we go from here. Quite a bit of editing to do with 3 years worth of material. So you'll see some changes as I go along. But yeah, as always, you guys know the drill. If you feel comfortable doing so and you haven't already, drop a like, drop a subscribe. Leave a comment if there's anything you have a question on, a comment on, anything of that nature. I'll respond to what I get and what I can. As always, I appreciate everybody that watches these, and we will catch you on the next one.